The morning they decided Eliza Brenner's fate started like most winter mornings in Havens Ridge, cold enough to make your teeth ache and your fingers go numb even before you stepped outside. Eliza stood in the community hall, a drafty barn of a building that smelled like old wood smoke and judgment. 27 people sat on benches around her in a loose semicircle, not quite close enough to touch. Never close enough for that. She'd known this was coming for months, maybe longer. You could feel it in the way conversation stopped when you entered a room. The way eyes slid past you like you weren't quite there. The way mothers pulled their children a little closer when you walked by, as if whatever was wrong with you might be catching. Elder Hutchins cleared his throat. He was a thin man with a beard that looked like it had been glued on in patches, and he had the kind of voice that made everything sound like a funeral announcement, even when he was asking about the weather. "Miss Brenner," he said. "Not Eliza. Never Eliza. We've gathered today to discuss your situation. Your situation. Like she was a broken wagon wheel or a leaky roof, a problem to be solved. We're a small community," Hutchins continued. His fingers worried at the edge of his Bible, though Eliza noticed he hadn't actually opened it. Resources are scarce. Every mouth we feed, every person we shelter, it has to be justified. It has to make sense for the collective good. Eliza said nothing. There was nothing to say yet. She'd learned years ago that speaking too soon just gave them more ammunition. "You're a grown woman now," he went on. 28 years old, of marriageable age for... He paused, his eyes flicking down to the paper in front of him. More than a decade. Sarah Pembroke, seated to Hutchins' left, leaned forward. She was a hard woman with a face like a hatchet and the charity of a tax collector. "We've been patient, Eliza, more than patient. But facts are facts. You consume more resources than you contribute. You eat more than the other women. You require more fabric for clothing. More—" "I work," Eliza said quietly. Her voice sounded strange in the big room, smaller than she'd intended. "I work as hard as anyone." "You work hard, yes," Hutchins agreed, in the tone of a man making a concession he didn't really mean. "No one disputes your work ethic, but this isn't about effort. It's about practicality. It's about what's sustainable." What he meant was, you're too big, too much, too expensive to keep around. Eliza was tall, taller than most of the men in Havens Ridge, and built solid. Not fat exactly, but substantial, strong. Her mother had been built the same way, God rest her, and her grandmother before that. Good farm stock, her father used to say, back when he was still alive to say anything. But good farm stock didn't count for much when there was barely enough farm to go around. "The council has made a decision," Hutchins said. "We're prepared to extend you one final opportunity. 2 weeks. If a man of this settlement is willing to take you as his wife within that time, you may stay. If not—" He spread his hands like he was releasing a dove. "We simply cannot justify the expense any longer." There it was, the sentence, delivered soft as Sunday prayer. 2 weeks to find a husband or get thrown out into a wilderness that killed experienced trappers and hunters. 2 weeks for some man to decide she was worth the trouble. Eliza looked around the room at the faces she'd known her entire life. Not one of them met her eyes. Not one. "Is there anything you'd like to say?" Hutchins asked. What was there to say? Please? She'd never begged in her life and wasn't about to start. "Thank you? For what exactly?" "No," she said. "Nothing. Then we're dismissed." The room emptied quickly. People couldn't get away from her fast enough, like failure might be contagious. Within 2 minutes, Eliza stood alone in the community hall, with nothing but the wind rattling the shutters, and the weight of 2 weeks sitting on her chest like a stone. She didn't go home right away. Home was a small cabin she'd shared with her father until he died 3 years ago, and it felt even smaller since they'd reassigned half of it to a young couple last spring. Now she had one room and a corner of the kitchen. They were generous enough to let her keep the corner. Instead, she walked to the edge of the settlement, where the tree line started and civilization, such as it was, ended. The forest beyond was dense pine and spruce, dark even in daylight, and it went on for hundreds of miles in every direction. People who went in alone didn't always come back out. She stood there a long time, her breath making clouds in the freezing air, and tried to figure out what she was supposed to do now. The options weren't good. She could throw herself at one of the unmarried men in Havens Ridge. Beg, plead, make herself even smaller and more pathetic than they already thought she was. Maybe John Carver would take pity on her. He was 63 and had outlived 2 wives already. He'd probably appreciate someone strong enough to chop his firewood. Or she could leave on her own terms. Walk into those trees and take her chances. Maybe she'd make it to another settlement. Maybe she'd freeze to death in the first night. Either way, it would be her choice, not theirs. Or, Eliza Brenner. The voice came from behind her, deep and rough as gravel in a bucket. She spun around, heart hammering. The man standing 10 feet away was not from Havens Ridge. She would have remembered him. He was massive, not just tall, but broad across the shoulders like he'd been built to carry logs. His beard was thick and dark, streaked with gray, and his hair hung past his collar in a way that would have gotten him scolded by the elders if he'd been one of theirs. He wore furs that looked like he'd killed and skinned the animals himself, and his eyes were the color of flint. "Who are you?" Eliza managed. "Rowan Hale." He said it like she should know the name. When she didn't react, he added, "I live up on Widow's Peak. Been there about 6 years." Widow's Peak. She'd heard of it, a mountain about 15 miles north of Havens Ridge, so remote that even the hunters avoided it. People said it was cursed. People said a lot of stupid things. "What do you want?" she asked. "Heard you're in need of a husband." Eliza felt her face go hot. Word travels fast. Small territories, not much else to talk about. He took a step closer, and Eliza fought the urge to step back. "I got a proposition for you." "I'm not interested in charity," she said quickly. "Good. Wasn't offering any." His eyes moved over her, not leering, not cruel, just assessing, like he was sizing up a horse or a tool. "I need a wife. You need a husband. Seems practical." Eliza laughed. She couldn't help it. "You don't even know me. Know enough. You're strong, healthy, not afraid of work. How could you possibly know that?" "Been watching the settlement for a few days. Saw you splitting wood yesterday. You don't swing that axe like someone who's afraid of work." He paused. "Also saw you carry 2 water buckets up that hill without stopping to rest. Most women here couldn't manage one." It should have felt creepy being watched. Instead, it felt strange, like being noticed for something other than how much space she took up. "Why me?" she asked. "If you want a wife, there are prettier girls in town, smaller ones, easier ones. Don't want pretty, don't want small, don't want easy." He said it flat, like he was reading a list. "I want someone who can survive a mountain winter, someone who won't break the first time things get hard. Someone built for the life I live." "You don't know anything about me," Eliza repeated. "I know you're out here staring at those trees like you're thinking about walking into them alone. I know the settlement just gave you 2 weeks to find a man or get thrown out. I know you got no good options." He crossed his arms. "I'm an option. Not a good one, maybe, but an option." "You're insane," Eliza said. "Probably." He didn't sound bothered by it. "But I'm honest. I won't lie to you. Life up on that mountain is hard. Harder than anything you've known here. The cold will try to kill you. The isolation will try to break you. The work never stops. You'll probably hate me by spring." "Not exactly selling it," Eliza muttered. "Not trying to sell it, trying to tell you the truth." He met her eyes. "But you'll have a place. You'll have purpose. And you won't have to spend the rest of your life making yourself smaller so other people feel comfortable." Something in her chest twisted at that. Making yourself smaller. That's exactly what it felt like every single day. Trying to take up less space, eat less food, need less, want less, be less. "I don't love you," she said. "I don't even know you. Don't need love, need a partner, someone who can pull their weight, someone who won't give up when it gets ugly." "And if I say no?" He shrugged. "Then I go back to my mountain alone and you figure out your own solution. No hard feelings either way." Eliza looked back at the trees, then at the settlement behind her, then at the stranger who'd appeared out of nowhere offering her the strangest proposal she'd ever heard. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "You got 2 weeks. I'll be here 3 days. After that, I head back up the mountain whether you're with me or not." He turned to go, then paused. "One more thing. I don't want a servant. I don't want someone to cook and clean and keep quiet. I want an equal, a partner. If that's not something you can be, then don't waste my time or yours." Then he walked away, disappearing into the trees like he'd never been there at all. Eliza stood in the cold for another 10 minutes, trying to make sense of what had just happened. A partner. An equal. No one in her entire life had ever used those words in relation to her. That night, sleep didn't come easy. She lay in her narrow bed, listening to the couple in the other room argue about something in whispered hisses, and turned Rowan Hale's proposal over and over in her mind. It was crazy, obviously crazy. Marry a stranger and move to a mountain in the middle of nowhere? Trust her entire life to a man she'd spoken to for less than 10 minutes? But what was the alternative? She thought about John Carver with his roomy eyes and his wandering hands and the way he looked at her like she was a broodmare. She thought about the other men in town, the ones who'd never looked at her at all, and the ones who'd looked at her like she was a curiosity at best, a burden at worst. She thought about being cast out, walking into that forest alone with nothing but the clothes on her back and maybe a few days' worth of food. None of those options felt like living. They felt like different flavors of dying slowly. At least with Rowan Hale, it would be something different, something chosen, not forced. He'd been blunt about it. Life would be hard, maybe impossible. But he'd also said she could be an equal, a partner. When was the last time anyone had offered her that? Eliza made her decision sometime around 3 in the morning, in the cold dark when everything seems both clearer and more terrifying. She'd take the chance. Better to die trying something new than to wither away in a place that had already decided she wasn't worth keeping. She found Rowan the next afternoon at the trading post on the edge of town. He was bargaining with Old Man Jessup for supplies: flour, salt, ammunition. He looked out of place among the neat shelves and carefully organized goods, too wild and too big for the space. "I'll do it," Eliza said without preamble. Rowan turned. He didn't look surprised. "You sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." The corner of his mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but close. "Fair enough. We leave tomorrow at first light." Tomorrow? She'd expected a few days at least, time to prepare, to say goodbye, to... "Winter doesn't wait for anyone," Rowan said. "Every day we delay is a day closer to being trapped by snow. You want to do this? We do it now." Eliza took a breath. "Okay, tomorrow. Bring warm clothes. Everything else I got. I don't have much." "Good. Less to carry." Jessup was watching them both with undisguised curiosity. By nightfall, everyone in Havens Ridge would know that the strange mountain man had claimed Eliza Brenner. By morning, they'd be talking about what a perfect match it was. The town burden and the crazy hermit, neither one fit for civilized company. Let them talk. She wouldn't be here to listen. But her last night in Havens Ridge, Eliza packed what little she owned into a canvas sack: 3 dresses, 2 pairs of stockings, her mother's shawl, a book her father had given her when she was 12, the pages worn soft from reading. Sarah Pembroke knocked on her door around sunset. Eliza almost didn't answer. "I heard the news," Sarah said when Eliza finally opened the door. "About you and the mountain man." "Word travels fast," Eliza said for the second time in 2 days. "People are concerned." "People are relieved," Eliza corrected. "One less mouth to feed, one less problem to solve." Sarah had the decency to look uncomfortable. "That's not... We were only trying to do what's best for the community." "I know, and now you don't have to worry about me anymore." "That man, Rowan Hale, he's not civilized, Eliza. He lives like an animal up there. No church, no community, no structure. Are you sure this is what you want?" "Want doesn't really come into it, does it?" Eliza asked. "It's what I'm doing." Sarah opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "If it doesn't work out, if you need to come back..." "I won't be coming back," Eliza said. "There's nothing here for me to come back to." That shut Sarah up. She left without another word, and Eliza closed the door on Havens Ridge for the last time. Rowan was waiting at the tree line when she arrived just after dawn. The sky was gray and heavy with the promise of snow, and her breath came in white clouds. He looked her over. "That all you got?" She held up her sack. "I travel light." "Good." He shouldered his own pack, which was easily 3 times the size of hers, and looked like it weighed more than she did. "Stay close. The trail's not well marked, and if you get lost up here, you don't get found." "Comforting," Eliza muttered. Not trying to comfort you, trying to keep you alive. They started walking. The first mile wasn't bad. The trees were thick, but the path was clear enough, and Eliza's legs were strong from years of hard work. She kept pace with Rowan without too much trouble. The second mile got harder. The ground started to slope upward, and the air got thinner and colder. Her lungs burned with every breath. By the third mile, she was seriously questioning every decision that had led her to this moment. "You doing okay?" Rowan asked. He wasn't even breathing hard. "Fine," Eliza lied. "We can stop if you need to." "I said I'm fine." He gave her a look that said he didn't believe her, but he didn't argue. They kept walking. The forest changed as they climbed. The trees grew taller and closer together, blocking out most of the sky. Snow started falling around midday, light at first, then heavier. Eliza's feet went numb in her boots. "How much further?" she asked when they stopped for water. "Another 6 miles. Maybe 7. He handed her his canteen. "We'll make camp before dark. Push through to the cabin tomorrow." "We're sleeping out here?" Eliza looked around at the endless trees and the gathering dark. "Got a tent. It's not much, but it'll keep the worst of the weather off." He studied her face. "You having second thoughts?" She was having third and fourth thoughts, honestly. But she said, "No. You're a terrible liar." "Lucky I'm not trying to lie then." That almost smile again. "Come on, we got a few more hours before we stop." They made camp in a small clearing just as the lights started to fail. Rowan had the tent up in less than 10 minutes, a simple canvas structure barely big enough for 2 people. He built a fire with quick, efficient movements, and soon they had something like warmth. Eliza sat on a log and tried not to think about how far they were from anything resembling civilization, or help, or safety. "Hungry?" Rowan asked. "Starving." He pulled out dried meat and hard bread from his pack. It wasn't much, but Eliza ate like it was a feast. She hadn't realized how hungry walking all day could make you. "You did good today," Rowan said. "Better than I expected." "Thanks, I think." Most people from settlements like Haven's Ridge, they're not built for this. Too soft. Too used to easy living. "Haven's Ridge wasn't exactly easy living," Eliza said. "Easier than this." He poked at the fire with a stick. "You'll find out soon enough." They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled. Snow fell. Somewhere in the distance, something howled. "What was that?" Eliza asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Wolves. They won't bother us with the fire going." He didn't sound concerned. "And when the fire goes out?" "I'll keep it going." "All night?" "Someone has to." Eliza looked at him across the flames. His face was shadowed, hard to read. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked. "You could have found a wife anywhere. Why go all the way to Haven's Ridge for someone like me?" "Already told you, I need someone strong. Someone who won't break." "There's more to it than that." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "My first winter up on that mountain, I almost died. Got snowed in for 3 weeks, ran out of food, couldn't hunt because the game had all gone to ground. Lost 40 pounds and came out of it knowing I couldn't do another winter alone. Not and survive." "So you need me to keep you alive," Eliza said. "We'll keep each other alive. That's how it works." He met her eyes. "I don't have pretty words, Eliza. I'm not going to tell you this will be some kind of fairy tale. It'll be work and cold and hunger and fear, but it'll be honest, and we'll face it together. That's more than most people get." It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even particularly comforting, but it was honest. And somehow, that mattered more than all the pretty lies she'd been told her whole life. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay, what?" "Okay, we'll keep each other alive." Rowan nodded once, like they'd just sealed a contract. Maybe they had. "Get some sleep," he said. "Tomorrow's going to be harder." Eliza crawled into the tent and wrapped herself in the blankets Rowan provided. They smelled like smoke and pine and something wild she couldn't name. Through the canvas, she could see the shadow of Rowan sitting by the fire, keeping watch. She should have been terrified. She'd just left everything she knew to follow a stranger into the wilderness. She was completely at his mercy. If he wanted to hurt her, rob her, leave her out here to die, there was nothing she could do about it. But somehow, she wasn't afraid. Not of him, anyway. Sleep came slow, but when it came, it was deeper than she'd slept in months. The second day was worse than the first. Her legs ached from yesterday's walk, her feet were blistered, and the terrain got steeper and rougher with every mile. But she didn't complain, didn't ask to stop, didn't slow down. Rowan noticed. She could tell by the way he looked at her, not with pity or concern, but with something like respect. They reached Widow's Peak just before dark. The cabin sat in a small clearing near the summit, backed up against a wall of rock that provided shelter from the worst of the wind. It was bigger than Eliza expected. One large room with a sleeping loft, a stone fireplace, and actual glass windows, rough but solid, built to last. Home, Rowan said simply. Eliza stood in the doorway and looked around. There wasn't much. A table, 2 chairs, a bed that was more furs than frame, shelves lined with supplies. But it was clean, organized. Someone had put thought into it. "It's not Haven's Ridge," Rowan said. "Thank God for that," Eliza replied. He smiled. A real smile this time. Not just that twitch at the corner of his mouth. It changed his whole face. "Come on," he said. "I'll show you around before the light's gone." What? The next few days were a blur of learning. Rowan showed her where he kept everything: food, tools, ammunition, medical supplies. He taught her how to split wood properly, how to bank a fire so it would last through the night, how to read the sky for coming weather. He walked her through his daily routine, checking traps, hauling water from the spring, maintaining the cabin, preparing meals. It was relentless work, the kind that made her old life in Haven's Ridge look lazy by comparison. But it was purposeful work. Every task had a reason. Every action mattered, and Rowan didn't treat her like a student or a servant. He treated her like a partner. When she struggled with something, he showed her how to do it better. When she succeeded, he acknowledged it with a nod or a grunt of approval. He didn't coddle her, but he didn't expect her to fail either. It was strange, unfamiliar, but not bad. "You're picking this up faster than I expected," Rowan said one evening as they cleaned their dinner dishes. "You keep saying that," Eliza replied. "Did you expect me to be completely useless?" "Expected you to need more time to adjust. Most people do." He set a plate on the drying rack. "You're tougher than you look." "I'm pretty tough looking," Eliza pointed out. "I'm built like a barn." "You're built like someone who was meant for this kind of life. There's a difference." Eliza didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. That night, lying in the loft, Rowan had insisted she take it. He'd sleep by the fire. She found herself thinking about that phrase. Meant for this kind of life. Was she? She'd spent so long being told she was wrong for where she was. Too much for Haven's Ridge, too big, too costly, too inconvenient. But up here, none of that mattered. Here, strength was an asset. Size was an advantage. The ability to work hard and keep going was the difference between life and death. Maybe Rowan was right. Maybe she'd been in the wrong place all along. The first real test came 2 weeks after she arrived. They were checking the trap line, a series of snares Rowan had set up in a wide loop around the cabin when they found fresh tracks in the snow. Big tracks. Bear tracks. "That's not good," Rowan said, studying them. "Why not?" Eliza asked. "I thought bears hibernated." "Most do. This one didn't. Probably couldn't find enough food before winter hit. That makes it desperate. Desperate animals are dangerous animals." He straightened up. "We need to get these traps checked fast and get back to the cabin. If that bear decides our supplies are easier than hunting, we've got a problem." They moved quickly after that, gathering what little they'd caught, 2 rabbits and a ptarmigan, and heading back. The whole way, Eliza couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. They were 50 yards from the cabin when she heard it, a sound like nothing she'd ever heard before, deep and rumbling and angry. "Run," Rowan said quietly. "Don't look back. Just run." Eliza ran. She heard Rowan behind her, heard the bear, oh God, that was definitely a bear, crashing through the trees, heard a gunshot that made her ears ring. She made it to the cabin, threw herself through the door, spun around just in time to see Rowan dive in behind her. He slammed the door and dropped the heavy wooden bar across it. Outside, something massive hit the door hard enough to rattle the whole cabin. "Is it going to get in?" Eliza asked, trying to keep the panic out of her voice. "No, but it might try for a while." Rowan moved to the window, rifle in hand. "Stay away from the windows. If it breaks the glass," another impact against the door. Then another. Then silence. They waited. 5 minutes. 10. Did you hit it? Eliza whispered. Grazed it, maybe. Wasn't a good shot. I was trying not to die. Fair. 15 minutes. Then they heard it. Claws on wood. The sound of something climbing. It's on the roof, Rowan said. He moved to the center of the cabin, rifle pointed up. Eliza followed his gaze to the ceiling. The logs looked solid, but a crack. Sharp and loud. Get in the corner, Rowan ordered. Behind the table. What are you... Do it! Now! Eliza scrambled behind the table just as part of the roof gave way. Snow and splinters rained down. A massive paw reached through the hole, claws like knives scraping at the wood. Rowan fired. The paw jerked back. A roar shook the cabin. Then nothing. They waited another 20 minutes before Rowan risked looking outside. The bear was gone. Blood in the snow suggested he'd hit it this time, but not fatally. It had decided easier prey was worth finding. We got lucky, Rowan said. If it had been hungrier or more committed, that could have gone bad. Eliza looked at the hole in the roof, the splintered door, the scattered supplies. This is bad. This is fixable. Bad would be one of us bleeding out in the snow. He set the rifle down. Help me get this patched before we lose all our heat. They worked until well past dark, covering the hole with canvas and boards, reinforcing the door, cleaning up the mess. By the time they finished, Eliza was shaking, not from cold, but from the adrenaline finally wearing off. First time you've been that close to death? Rowan asked. First time I've been that close to something that wanted to eat me, yeah. Won't be the last. This far out, everything's trying to kill you. The cold, the animals, the mountain itself. You just have to be tougher than all of it. And if I'm not? He looked at her steadily. Then you get tougher, or you die. Those are the options. It should have sounded harsh, cruel even, but it was just the truth. And somehow, Eliza found that comforting. No lies, no false hope, just the reality of the life she'd chosen. Okay, she said. Then I'll get tougher. I believe you will, Rowan said. And for the first time since arriving on this mountain, Eliza believed it too. The roof got patched. The door got reinforced. The bear didn't come back. But something else did. Something Eliza hadn't expected and didn't know how to name. A rhythm. Days folded into each other with a kind of brutal consistency. Wake before dawn. Build up the fire. Boil water for coffee that tasted like dirt but warmed you from the inside out. Check the traps. Haul wood. Repair whatever the mountain had broken overnight. Cook, eat, sleep, repeat. It should have been monotonous, soul-crushing even. Instead, Eliza found herself settling into it like a hand finding its place in a worn glove. 3 weeks into her new life, she woke to find Rowan already up, standing at the window with his rifle. What is it? She asked, climbing down from the loft. Tracks. Human tracks, fresh. His voice was flat, but his shoulders were tense. Someone came through during the night, got close to the cabin. Real close. Eliza's stomach dropped. Who would be out here? Don't know. Could be a trapper passing through, could be someone looking for shelter, could be someone looking for trouble. He turned to face her. Out here, you don't assume the best. You prepare for the worst. What do? We stay alert. Keep the rifle loaded. Don't go anywhere alone. He handed her a knife, a serious blade, the kind meant for fighting, not cooking. Keep this on you, always. I don't know how to use a knife like that, Eliza said. You stick the pointy end in anything that tries to hurt you. That's how you use it. He wasn't joking. I'll teach you properly when we've got time. For now, just don't cut yourself. The tracks didn't come back that night, or the next. But Rowan stayed on edge for days, and Eliza found herself jumping at every sound outside the cabin. The wilderness had felt dangerous before, but in an impersonal way, weather and animals doing what weather and animals do. This was different. This was the threat of intent, of malice. It made everything feel smaller, more fragile. Has this happened before? Eliza asked one evening as they cleaned their rifles together. Rowan had started teaching her to shoot the week before, and her shoulder still ached from the recoil. Once, 2 years back, 3 men showed up claiming they were lost, needed supplies. He ran an oiled cloth down the barrel. They weren't lost. They were thieves. Waited until I was out checking traps, then tried to clean out the cabin. What happened? I came back early. His voice went cold. They didn't try it twice. Eliza didn't ask for details. She wasn't sure she wanted them. The world gets meaner the farther you get from civilization, Rowan continued. People think it's the opposite, that cities are dangerous and the wilderness is pure or some nonsense. But out here, there's no law, no consequences, just what you can take and what you can hold on to. Comforting, Eliza muttered. Not supposed to be comforting, supposed to be true. He set the rifle aside. You need to understand what you're living in now. This isn't Haven's Ridge. Nobody's coming to help us. Nobody cares if we live or die except us. I get it, Eliza said. We're on our own. That's right. He looked at her directly. So we watch each other's backs. We stay sharp. And we don't trust anyone who shows up out here with a sad story and empty hands. Agreed? Agreed. That night, Eliza lay in the loft with the knife under her pillow and listened to Rowan moving around below. She wondered what kind of man could live like this, always watchful, always prepared for the worst. It would wear most people down to nothing, but Rowan wasn't most people. And maybe, she was starting to realize, neither was she. The first snow came hard in early December. Not the light dustings they'd been getting, but a real storm. 3 feet in 18 hours, wind howling like something alive and angry, temperature dropping so fast that the water in the bucket froze solid. They were trapped in the cabin for 4 days. Eliza learned things about Rowan during those 4 days. Small things. He hummed while he worked, always the same tune, something she didn't recognize. He was left-handed, but shot right. He'd read most of the books on his shelf at least 3 times each. He had a scar on his ribs from a knife fight in a trading post near the Canadian border. He didn't like talking about his past, but he didn't mind talking about almost anything else. Where'd you learn to build like this? Eliza asked on the 3rd day, watching him repair a crack in the window frame. Trial and error mostly, some from my father before he died, some from a carpenter I worked for when I was younger. He tested the seal. Buildings are honest. You do it right, they stand. You do it wrong, they fall down. No politics, no judgment, just physics. Is that why you came out here? To get away from people? Part of it. He moved to the next window. Got tired of pretending to care about things that didn't matter. Who's marrying who? What the preacher said on Sunday, whether my shirt was tucked in properly. He paused. I wanted to live in a place where the only thing that mattered was whether you could survive. Turns out, I could. Don't you get lonely? Sometimes. But I got used to my own company. Started to prefer it even. He glanced at her. Present company excluded. It was the closest thing to a compliment he'd given her, and Eliza felt something warm spread through her chest. I like it here, she said quietly. I know that probably sounds crazy. It's cold and hard, and we almost got killed by a bear, and there might be bandits in the woods, but I like it. I feel more like myself than I ever did in Haven's Ridge. That's because this place doesn't ask you to be anything except what you are, Rowan said. The mountain doesn't care if you're pretty or polite or proper. It only cares if you're strong enough to survive it. And am I? Eliza asked. Strong enough? Rowan set down his tools and looked at her fully. You walked 15 miles through snow without complaining. You learned to split wood in 3 days. You didn't panic when that bear came after us. You asked questions instead of waiting to be told. You pull your weight without being asked. He picked up his tools again. Yeah, you're strong enough. You just didn't know it before because nobody ever gave you the chance to find out. Eliza didn't trust herself to speak, so she just nodded and went back to mending the sock in her lap. But Rowan's words echoed in her head for the rest of the day. You're strong enough. You just didn't know it. On the 4th day, the storm broke. They dug themselves out, cleared the snow from the roof before its weight could cause problems, and checked the damage. One of the shutters had blown off. Part of the woodpile had collapsed. The path to the spring was completely buried, but they were alive. The cabin was intact. They had food and fuel. They'd survived. We make a good team, Rowan said as they hauled water from the spring that afternoon. It was such a simple statement, delivered so casually, that Eliza almost missed how much it meant. But she didn't miss it. She felt it settle into her bones like warmth from a fire. Yeah, she agreed. We do. December bled into January. The cold got worse, the days got shorter, the work never stopped. But something else was happening too. Something Eliza noticed in small increments, like watching snow accumulate. Individually meaningless, collectively transformative. She was changing. Her hands, once soft despite years of work in Havens Ridge, grew calloused and strong. Her shoulders broadened from hauling wood and water. Her lungs adapted to the thin mountain air. Her appetite grew to match the work. She ate portions that would have gotten her scolded back home and felt no shame about it. She was becoming something different, something harder, something that fit this place. And it wasn't just physical. She stopped second-guessing herself, stopped apologizing for taking up space. When Rowan asked her opinion, she gave it. When she disagreed with him, she said so. When she needed help, she asked for it without shame. And Rowan treated her exactly the same as he always had. Like an equal, like a partner. It was intoxicating. "You're smiling," Rowan observed one morning as they worked on tanning a deer hide he'd brought down the week before. "Am I?" Eliza touched her face, surprised. "You do that sometimes now. Smile, for no reason." "Maybe I've got reasons." "Such as?" Eliza thought about it. "I'm warm. I'm fed. I'm doing work that matters. Nobody's telling me I'm too much or too costly or too inconvenient." She scraped at the hide. "Those feel like reasons." "Fair enough." Rowan worked in silence for a moment, then said, "You ever regret it, coming here?" "No." She didn't even have to think about it. "You?" "No?" He looked at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "You fit here, Eliza, like you were always supposed to end up in a place like this." "With a man like you?" she asked before she could stop herself. "With a life like this," he corrected, but his eyes held hers a beat too long. The moment stretched between them, fragile and strange. Then Rowan looked away, back to his work, and the moment passed. But it didn't disappear. Not entirely. It hung in the air like smoke, and Eliza found herself thinking about it long after they'd finished with the hide. Late January brought a surprise. Visitors. They arrived just after noon. A man and a woman, both looking half-frozen and desperate. The man was thin and tall, with a scraggly beard. The woman was young, maybe 20, with a baby bundled against her chest. Rowan saw them coming from a distance. By the time they reached the cabin, he had his rifle in hand and Eliza had hers. "We don't mean any trouble," the man called out, hands raised. "We're just looking for shelter, a place to rest. We've been walking for 2 days." "Where from?" Rowan asked. "Settlement about 40 miles south. We left when the fever came through, killed half the town in a week." The man's voice cracked. "We couldn't stay. Couldn't risk our daughter." Rowan and Eliza exchanged a glance. "You sick?" Rowan asked. "No, none of us. We got out before it spread to our house." "Could be lying," Rowan said quietly to Eliza. "Could be telling the truth," Eliza countered. "That's a baby, Rowan. We can't turn away a baby." Rowan's jaw worked. "1 night, that's all. And they sleep in the shed, not the cabin." He called out the terms to the couple. The man nodded eagerly. "Thank you, we're grateful, truly." They brought the couple to the small shed where Rowan stored tools and equipment. It wasn't warm, but with blankets and a small fire, it would be survivable for 1 night. Eliza brought them food, dried venison, hard bread, hot coffee. The woman took it with shaking hands. "Thank you," she whispered. "We haven't eaten in a day. Our supplies ran out yesterday." "What's the baby's name?" Eliza asked. "Sarah. She's 4 months old." Eliza looked at the tiny face peeking out from the blankets. The baby was too quiet, too still. That wasn't a good sign. "Is she sick?" Eliza asked. "Hungry, mostly. My milk's been drying up. Not enough food for me means not enough for her." The woman's eyes filled with tears. I'm trying so hard." Eliza felt something crack open in her chest. "I'll bring you more food, as much as we can spare. You need to eat if you're going to feed her." "We can't take your supplies," the man said. "You've done enough already." "You'll take what we give you and be grateful for it," Eliza said, more sharply than she intended. "That baby needs you healthy." She brought them 2 more portions of food and an extra blanket. Rowan watched but didn't comment. That night, lying in the loft, Eliza couldn't stop thinking about the baby's too still face. "They're not our problem," Rowan said from below, as if reading her thoughts. "I know. We can't save everyone who wanders up here. I know. One night, then they move on. That's the deal. I know, Rowan. Eliza rolled over to look down at him. I'm not arguing with you. He met her eyes. But you want to. What I want doesn't matter. You're right. We can't save everyone. We've barely got enough for ourselves. But, Eliza sighed, but that's a baby, and I can't stop thinking about what happens to her when they leave here tomorrow. Rowan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Me neither. In the morning, they gave the couple enough food for a week and directions to the nearest settlement. The man tried to offer payment, a small knife, barely worth anything. Keep it, Rowan said. You'll need it more than we will. They watched the family disappear into the trees. The baby never made a sound. Think they'll make it? Eliza asked. No, Rowan said bluntly, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll get lucky. You don't believe in luck? No, but sometimes I wish I did. The encounter left Eliza unsettled for days. She kept seeing that baby's face, kept wondering if they'd done enough, if there was more they could have done. You can't carry the weight of everyone's suffering, Rowan told her one evening. You'll break under it. How do you not think about it? Eliza asked. How do you just let people go and not wonder what happened to them? I do wonder. But wondering doesn't change anything. They make their choices. We make ours. All we can do is survive our own life, not live everyone else's. It was harsh, practical, probably true. But it still hurt. February came in cold and stayed cold. The traps were producing less. Game was scarce, hunkered down against the brutal weather. They started rationing their food, making meals smaller, stretching everything as far as it would go. Eliza felt the hunger like a constant companion. Not starvation, not yet, but the gnawing awareness that there wasn't quite enough, that they were burning through reserves faster than they could replenish them. How much longer until spring? She asked one night. 2 months, maybe 3. Rowan stared into the fire. We've got enough to make it if we're careful, but there's no room for mistakes. And if something happens, if we lose supplies somehow, then we get creative, eat things we wouldn't normally eat, push through, survive. He looked at her. That's all winter is out here. One long exercise in surviving until the world thaws out again. Sounds grim. It is grim, but you're tougher than you think. We both are. Eliza wanted to believe him. Most days she did. But some days when the wind howled and the cold seeped into her bones and the hunger sat heavy in her stomach, she wondered if they'd miscalculated, if this was the winter that broke them. Those were the days when Rowan seemed to sense her fear without her saying anything. Those were the days he sat closer to her by the fire, talked more, told stories about other winters he'd survived, other close calls that had seemed impossible until they weren't. The worst winter I had, I ran out of everything, he said one night. No food, no ammunition, nothing but what I could catch with my bare hands and what I could scavenge. I ate tree bark, boiled pine needles for tea, caught a rabbit with a snare made from my bootlace. How did you survive? Stubbornness, mostly, refusing to admit the mountain had won. He smiled, but it was grim. And luck, though I wouldn't admit that at the time. I thought you didn't believe in luck. I don't, but I survived that winter anyway, so call it whatever you want. Eliza leaned against his shoulder without thinking about it. He stiffened for just a moment, then relaxed. They sat like that until the fire burned low, and Eliza felt something shift between them again. Something that had been building slowly, carefully, like ice forming on a lake. Trust, maybe, or something deeper. She didn't have a name for it yet, but she felt it all the same. The crisis came in mid-February. Eliza woke to a strange sound, a creaking, then a crash that shook the whole cabin. She scrambled down from the loft to find Rowan already up, cursing viciously. Part of the roof had caved in. Not the section they'd repaired after the bear, a different section entirely. Snow was pouring in through a hole the size of a table. How bad is it? Eliza shouted over the wind. Bad! Rowan was already pulling on his coat. We need to patch it now or we'll lose the whole cabin to snow and wind. They worked in the freezing dark, hauling boards and canvas up to the roof, hammering in the wind that tried to rip everything from their hands. Eliza's fingers went numb in minutes. Her face felt like it was being flayed by the cold. But they kept working. It took 2 hours to patch the hole well enough to keep out the worst of the weather. By the time they climbed back down, both of them were shaking violently, and Eliza couldn't feel her feet. "Inside," Rowan ordered. "We need to warm up before we get frostbite." They stripped off their wet clothes and wrapped themselves in every blanket they owned, huddling by the fire. Eliza's teeth chattered so hard she thought they might crack. "We could have died up there," she said when she could finally speak. "Yeah." Rowan's voice was rough. "We didn't, though. We got lucky. We got stubborn. Stubborn counts for more than luck." Eliza laughed, though it came out shaky. "Is that what we're calling it?" "That's what I'm calling it." He shifted closer, sharing body heat. "You did good up there. Didn't panic, didn't freeze, just worked." I was terrified. "Being scared and doing it anyway is called courage, Eliza." She looked at him. His face was red from the cold, his hair wild, ice still clinging to his beard. He looked half frozen and exhausted and completely alive. And she realized, sitting there in the wreckage of their cabin with the wind still howling outside, that she'd never felt more present in her own life. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me. For bringing me here. For treating me like I matter." Rowan held her gaze. "You do matter. More than you know." The words sat between them, heavy with meaning Eliza wasn't quite ready to examine. But she felt them, all the way down. The rest of February passed in a haze of repairs and rationing and relentless cold. But they made it through, together. And when March finally arrived with its weak sunlight and slightly warmer temperatures, Eliza stood outside the cabin and realized something that should have terrified her but didn't. She couldn't imagine going back to the person she'd been before this. Couldn't imagine returning to a life where she made herself smaller, quieter, less. This mountain had changed her. And Rowan, gruff, honest, impossible Rowan, had shown her who she'd been all along, someone strong enough to survive anything. Even herself. Spring didn't arrive all at once. It came in fragments, a day warm enough to melt the ice on the water bucket, followed by 3 days of freezing rain. A morning when Eliza could see her breath, an afternoon when she couldn't. The snow retreated in patches, revealing dead grass and mud and the bones of winter underneath. But it was coming, slowly, grudgingly, but coming. Eliza noticed the change in Rowan too. He moved differently as the weather warmed, with more energy, more purpose. He talked about planting a garden, about hunting fresh meat instead of relying on dried stores, about all the repairs they could finally make now that they weren't fighting just to stay warm. "We made it," he said one morning in late March, standing outside the cabin with his face turned toward the weak sun. "Wasn't sure we would, couple times there, but we made it." "Was it close?" Eliza asked. "Closer than I wanted it to be. We got down to maybe 2 weeks of food at the worst point. If spring had come any later," he shrugged. "But it didn't, so we're here." Eliza thought about those days in February when her stomach had gnawed at itself, and every meal felt like it was half what it should be. She'd been hungry before, back in Havens Ridge, but this had been different. This had been the kind of hunger that whispered you might not make it. But they had. "I want to learn to hunt," she said suddenly. Rowan turned to look at her. Yeah, I can shoot now, sort of, but I want to learn to track, to find game, to bring down something bigger than a rabbit." She met his eyes. "I don't want to just survive the next winter. I want to thrive in it. And that means pulling my weight in ways I'm not pulling it now." "You pull your weight plenty. I pull my weight in the cabin, with the chores. But you're the one who brings in the meat. You're the one who knows where to find the game and how to read the signs. I want to learn that. I need to learn it." Rowan studied her for a long moment, then he nodded. "All right, we'll start tomorrow." They started before dawn. Rowan taught her to move quietly through the forest, to watch where she stepped, to pay attention to broken twigs and disturbed earth and the patterns animals left behind. He showed her how to read scat, how to identify tracks, how to tell if something had passed through an hour ago or a day ago. "Hunting's not about the kill," he said as they crouched beside a deer trail. "That's the end result. But most of hunting is patience, observation, understanding the animal better than it understands itself." "How do you learn that?" Eliza whispered. "Time, failure, paying attention." He pointed to a scrape mark on a tree trunk. "See that? Buck marking his territory. Means he's moving through this area regularly. We set up downwind of here, wait long enough, we'll see him." They waited 3 hours. Eliza's legs cramped, her back ached. Mosquitoes found every exposed inch of skin, but she didn't complain, and then, just when she was starting to think the buck was a myth, it appeared. A massive animal, easily 200 pounds, moving through the trees with cautious grace. Rowan touched her shoulder, pointed. The gesture was clear. "You're shot." Eliza raised the rifle slowly, the way he'd taught her. Found the buck in her sights, waited for it to present a clean angle. Her heart hammered so hard she thought the buck might hear it. She squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked through the forest. The buck stumbled, recovered, ran. Eliza's stomach sank. "You hit it," Rowan said. "Not clean, but you hit it. Come on." They tracked it for half a mile, following the blood trail through the underbrush. Eliza felt sick. She'd wounded it, but not killed it. The animal was suffering because of her. "Don't," Rowan said, reading her expression. "Don't do that to yourself. First time I went hunting, I lost a deer I'd wounded. Tracked it for 2 days before I found it dead. Felt like the worst person alive. But my father told me something that stuck. He said the only way to honor the animal is to get better, to make cleaner kills, to waste less. Guilt doesn't help anything. Improvement does." They found the buck 10 minutes later, collapsed against a fallen log. It was still alive, breathing in shallow gasps. Rowan handed Eliza his knife. "Finish it, quick and clean, right behind the shoulder blade up into the heart." Eliza's hands shook. She'd never killed anything bigger than a chicken, and that had been years ago. "I don't know if I can." "You can, and you need to. You made the shot, you finish it. That's how this works." Eliza knelt beside the buck. Its eye rolled toward her, dark and glassy with pain. She felt tears prick at her own eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Then she drove the knife home. The buck shuddered once and went still. Eliza sat back on her heels, knife still in her hand, and tried to process what she'd just done. She'd taken a life, ended something that had been alive and moving and breathing moments ago. "You did good," Rowan said quietly. "Clean finish. He didn't suffer long." "It feels awful," Eliza said. "It should. The day it doesn't feel awful is the day you need to worry." He knelt beside her. "But we needed this meat, and he'll feed us for weeks. His death has purpose. That matters." They field-dressed the deer together, Rowan walking her through each step. It was messy, brutal work. By the time they finished, Eliza was covered in blood up to her elbows. But when they hauled the meat back to the cabin and hung it to age, Eliza felt something unexpected settle into her chest. Pride. She'd provided. She'd hunted and killed and brought home food that would keep them alive. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't comfortable. But it was real. And she'd done it herself. "You're a hunter now," Rowan said that night as they ate fresh venison for the first time in months. "Not many people can say that." "I'm not sure I want to be a hunter," Eliza admitted. "It didn't feel good killing that deer." "It's not supposed to feel good, but it's necessary. And you'll get better at it. Cleaner kills, less suffering. That's the goal." Eliza nodded, but the weight of what she'd done still sat heavy on her. That night, she dreamed of the buck's dark eye watching her as she drove the knife home. She woke with a gasp, heart racing, and found Rowan sitting by the fire below. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Bad dream." "The deer? How'd you know?" "Because I had the same kind of dreams after my first kill. Hell, I still have them sometimes." He poked at the fire. "Come down here. Sitting alone with it just makes it worse." Eliza climbed down and sat beside him. The fire was warm and the cabin was quiet except for the wind outside. "Does it get easier?" she asked. "The killing? Yeah, sort of. You get more efficient, more respectful. You waste less," he paused. "But if you're asking if it stops mattering, the answer's no. At least it shouldn't. The day you can take a life without feeling anything is the day you've lost something important." "What if I don't want to do it again?" "Then you don't have to. I can handle the hunting." He looked at her. "But I think you're stronger than you're giving yourself credit for. I think you can do hard things and carry the weight of them and keep going anyway. That's what strength is, Eliza. Not being unbothered, being bothered and doing it anyway because it needs doing." Eliza leaned her head against his shoulder. He didn't pull away. They sat like that until the fire burned down to embers, and Eliza felt the weight in her chest ease just slightly. Maybe he was right. Maybe strength wasn't about being unaffected. Maybe it was about feeling everything and choosing to keep going despite it. April brought rain, endless, soaking rain that turned the world into mud and made everything damp and miserable. But it also brought green things pushing up through the earth, and birds returning from wherever they'd spent the winter, and the promise of warmer days ahead. Rowan started the garden the first week of April. Eliza helped him clear the plot, turn the soil, plant seeds they'd saved from last year. It was backbreaking work, but satisfying in a way that surprised her. "This'll give us vegetables through summer and into fall," Rowan explained as they worked. "And we'll dry and preserve what we can for winter. Makes a difference, having variety. Keeps you from getting sick when all you're eating is meat and grain." "You've really thought this through," Eliza said. "Had to. First couple of years up here, I nearly died from scurvy because I didn't understand nutrition worth a damn. Learned the hard way that you need more than just calories. You need variety." He tamped down the soil around a seed. "Living out here, you learn or you die. No middle ground." They worked in companionable silence for a while. Then Eliza said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why didn't you ever go back, to civilization, I mean? Even just to visit?" Rowan was quiet for a long moment. "Because I knew if I went back, I'd remember all the reasons I left. And I might also remember some reasons to stay. And I didn't want to second-guess the choice I'd made." "You never miss it? Not even a little?" "Sometimes I miss stupid things. Fresh bread from a real bakery, conversations with more than one person, music that isn't me humming off key." He smiled faintly. "But then I remember what I'd have to trade for those things, the judgment, the politics, the constant performance of being civilized, and I realize I'd rather have this." "Even though it nearly kills you every winter?" "Even though." He looked at her. "What about you? You miss Haven's Ridge?" "No." Eliza didn't even have to think about it. "I miss the idea of community sometimes, the feeling of being part of something bigger. But I don't miss that specific community. I don't miss feeling like a burden, like I had to apologize for existing." "You never have to apologize for existing, Eliza. Not to me, not to anyone." Something in the way he said it made Eliza's throat tight. She nodded and went back to planting, blinking away tears she couldn't quite explain. Late April brought a visitor. Not the desperate, dangerous kind from before, but someone Rowan seemed to recognize. "That's Jacob," he said, watching a figure approach from the tree line. "He's all right. Runs a trap line about 20 miles west. Comes through a couple times a year to trade." Jacob turned out to be a wiry man in his 50s, with a face like old leather and eyes that missed nothing. He sized Eliza up in about 3 seconds, then turned to Rowan with raised eyebrows. "Heard you'd taken a wife, didn't believe it." "Believe it now?" Rowan asked dryly. "Suppose I got to." Jacob extended a hand to Eliza. "Jacob Reeves. I'd say welcome to the neighborhood, but there's no neighborhood to speak of." "Eliza Brenner. Or Hale, I guess. We didn't really formalize the name situation. Out here, names matter less than whether you can pull your weight." Jacob looked her over again. "You look like you can." "She can," Rowan confirmed. "Brought down a buck last month, learning fast." Jacob whistled. "Well, damn, he picked better than I thought." He pulled a bag off his shoulder. "Brought trade goods. You got anything you're looking to swap?" They spent the next hour bartering. Jacob had coffee, real coffee, not the burned grain substitute they'd been drinking. And Rowan had furs. They negotiated like old friends who enjoyed the process as much as the outcome. "You hear anything from the settlements?" Rowan asked as they finalized the trade. Jacob's expression darkened. "Some. Nothing good. That fever I mentioned last time, it spread. Hit 3 more settlements before it burned itself out. A lot of people dead, a lot of places struggling. Any trouble heading this way?" "Always trouble heading every way, but nothing specific I've heard." Jacob glanced at Eliza. "You come from Haven's Ridge, right?" "Yeah, why?" "Heard they had some kind of leadership change. Old council got voted out. New council's apparently running things different, stricter, less charitable." Eliza felt a chill. "How do you hear all this?" "I travel. I listen. People talk to trappers because they know we don't stick around long enough to cause problems with the information." He shrugged. "Probably doesn't affect you anymore being up here, but thought you should know." After Jacob left, Eliza stood outside the cabin and thought about Haven's Ridge. About the people there, living under a stricter council, struggling through fever and shortages. Part of her felt vindicated. They'd thrown her out and now they were suffering, but a larger part just felt sad. "You all right?" Rowan asked, coming up beside her. "Just thinking about all those people who decided I wasn't worth keeping around. Wondering if they're regretting it now. Probably not. People don't usually regret their cruelty. They justify it instead." He was quiet for a moment. "But that's not your weight to carry. You didn't ask to be cast out. They chose that, and you chose to survive it. Those are separate things." "I know. Doesn't make it feel less complicated. Feelings are always complicated. That's what makes them feelings." He nudged her shoulder. "Come on. Let's make use of that coffee Jacob brought before it goes stale." They spent the evening drinking real coffee and talking about nothing important, and Eliza felt the complicated feelings about Havens Ridge settle somewhere she didn't have to look at them all the time. May exploded with life. Everything that had been dormant all winter suddenly pushed toward the sun. The garden sprouted. Wildflowers carpeted the meadow near the cabin. Animals that had been scarce all winter suddenly seemed to be everywhere, and Eliza felt something similar happening inside herself. She'd been so focused on survival through the winter that she hadn't noticed how much her body had been changing. But now, with the warmer weather and more abundant food, she couldn't ignore it anymore. She was exhausted all the time. Her breasts ached, her appetite had gone from large to nearly insatiable. And her monthly bleeding, which had been sporadic through the winter from stress and malnutrition, had stopped entirely. She knew what it meant. She just didn't want to admit it yet. But Rowan noticed. Of course he did. He noticed everything. "You're pregnant," he said one morning, flat and certain. Eliza was mending a shirt. She didn't look up. "I know. How long have you known?" "Couple weeks, maybe 3. Wasn't sure at first." She finally met his eyes. "Are you angry?" "Why would I be angry?" "Because this complicates things. Because a baby out here." She gestured at the wilderness around them. "That's dangerous. Maybe impossible." Rowan sat down across from her. "It's dangerous anywhere. Maybe more dangerous here, but not impossible." He paused. "Are you angry?" "No." Eliza realized it was true. "Scared, yeah. Terrified, actually. But not angry." "When do you think it'll come?" Eliza did the math in her head. "Late fall. November, maybe. Early December, if I'm wrong about timing." Rowan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "We'll need to prepare. Build a proper cradle, stock up on supplies, make sure we've got everything we need before winter sets in again." "That's it? That's your response? We need to build a cradle? What do you want me to say, Eliza? That I'm thrilled? I'm terrified too. But fear doesn't change the situation. We've got a baby coming, so we prepare for it. Same way we prepare for winter or storms or anything else that's coming, whether we're ready or not." Eliza laughed, though it came out shaky. "You're impossibly practical, you know that?" "Someone has to be. You're emotional enough for both of us." "I'm not that emotional." "You cried last week because a bird built a nest in the eaves and you thought it was beautiful." "It was beautiful," Eliza protested. Rowan smiled. It was a real smile, warm and genuine, and it made Eliza's chest hurt in a way she was starting to recognize. She loved him. She'd probably loved him for a while now, but she'd been too busy surviving to notice. And the fact that she was carrying his child, that they were building this impossible life together in the middle of nowhere, that should have been terrifying. It was terrifying. But it was also the most real thing she'd ever experienced. "We're going to be parents," she said, testing the words. "Looks that way." "That's insane." "Most of life is insane if you think about it too hard." Rowan reached across the table and took her hand. "But we'll figure it out. Same way we figured out everything else." Eliza squeezed his hand. "What if I'm not good at it? What if I don't know how to be a mother?" "Then you'll learn. Same way you learn to hunt and shoot and survive up here." He met her eyes. "You're stronger than you think, Eliza. You always have been. This won't be any different." She wanted to believe him. Some days she did. But as her body changed through May and into June, as the reality of what was coming settled into her bones, Eliza found herself afraid in new ways. Not afraid of the mountain or the cold or even childbirth itself, though all of those were legitimate fears. Afraid that she'd fail. That she wouldn't be enough. that this child would need more than she could give and suffer for it. Late one night in mid-June, when she couldn't sleep for the fear churning in her stomach, she climbed down from the loft and found Rowan awake as well. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "Thinking too much." "About the baby?" "About everything. The baby, winter, whether we've got enough supplies, whether we're making the right choices." He poked at the fire. "I've survived up here alone for 6 years, but keeping a wife and a baby alive through a mountain winter, that's different. That's harder." "You're scared," Eliza said, surprised. "Of course I'm scared. I'd be an idiot not to be." He looked at her. "But being scared doesn't mean we don't do it. It just means we do it carefully." Eliza sat beside him. "What if something goes wrong? With the birth, I mean. What if I need help and there's no one here to give it? Then we deal with it. I've delivered calves and foals. I've read medical books. I'll do everything I can." His voice was steady, but Eliza could hear the fear underneath. "But you're right. It's a risk. A big one. If you want to go to a settlement for the birth—" "No," Eliza said it firmly. "I'm not going back to any settlement. I'd rather take my chances here with you than be at the mercy of people who've already decided I'm disposable." "Even if it's safer?" "Is it safer? Really? Or is it just different risks?" She shook her head. "Here, I know you'll fight for me. For us. In a settlement, I'm just another burden, another mouth. I don't trust them to care whether I live or die. But I trust you." Rowan pulled her close, and Eliza leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. "We'll make it work," he said quietly. "Somehow. We always do." And sitting there in the firelight with Rowan's arms around her and a life growing inside her and the wilderness vast and dangerous outside, Eliza chose to believe him. Because the alternative was giving up, and she'd come too far to give up now. Summer passed in a blur of preparation and growth. Eliza's belly swelled as the garden flourished, both expanding under the relentless sun. Rowan built a cradle from pine, sanding it smooth so there'd be no splinters to catch tiny fingers. They dried meat, preserved vegetables, stockpiled firewood like they were preparing for war. Because in a way, they were. By August, Eliza could barely keep up with the work. Her back ached constantly. Her feet swelled. She was hungry all the time but couldn't eat much without feeling sick. The baby kicked hard enough to wake her at night, and she spent hours lying in the loft wondering what kind of person was growing inside her. "You need to rest more," Rowan said one afternoon when he found her hauling water from the spring. "I'm fine. You're 8 months pregnant and carrying buckets that weigh 40 pounds each. You're not fine. You're stubborn." "Stubborn's kept me alive this long," Eliza shot back. "And it'll kill you if you're not careful." He took the buckets from her. "I'm not saying don't work. I'm saying be smart about what work you do. Save your strength for when you'll need it." Eliza wanted to argue, but exhaustion won out. "Fine. What should I be doing?" "Light tasks. Mending. Food prep. Things you can do sitting down." He carried the water toward the cabin. "And sleep. You need more sleep." "I can't sleep. The baby won't let me." "Then rest. Lie down. Put your feet up. Something other than pushing yourself until you collapse." It was good advice. Practical advice. Eliza hated it. She'd spent her whole life being told she was too much, and now her own body was proving everyone right. She was slow, clumsy, limited in ways that made her feel useless. That night she said as much to Rowan. "You're not useless," he said flatly. "You're growing a whole human being inside you. That takes resources, energy. Of course you're tired. Of course you can't do everything you used to do. That doesn't make you useless. It makes you pregnant." "I hate feeling weak." "You're not weak. You're reallocating your strength." He looked at her. "Do you think I could do what you're doing? Carry a child for 9 months while still working and surviving up here? I'd probably die in the first trimester." Despite herself, Eliza laughed. "You would not." "I absolutely would. I'd complain constantly and demand sympathy and probably try to shoot the morning sickness like it was a bear attacking me." That made her laugh harder. "Shooting morning sickness. That's your solution?" "I'm a simple man with simple solutions." He smiled. "Point is, what you're doing is hard. Maybe the hardest thing either of us has ever done. So stop judging yourself for not being superhuman on top of it." Eliza leaned against him. He was warm and solid, and she loved him so much it hurt. She still hadn't said it out loud. Neither of them had, But she felt it every day in the way he looked at her, touched her, built a cradle with hands that knew violence but carved it gentle anyway. September brought the first cold snap. Not winter, not yet, but a reminder that it was coming. The leaves started turning, and the animals began their frantic preparations for the months ahead. Eliza felt the same urgency. 2 months left, maybe less. 2 months to finish every preparation, gather every supply, make sure they had everything they needed. What if I go into labor early, she asked one evening. Then we deal with it early. Rowan was sharpening his knives, the rhythmic scrape of stone on steel, oddly soothing. I've got the medical books. I've read the sections on childbirth about 50 times. I know what to expect. Knowing and doing are different things. Yeah, but I've done plenty of things I didn't know how to do until I had to do them. This won't be different. He tested the blade's edge. You're scared. That's normal. I'm scared too, but fear's just information. It tells you to be careful, to prepare, to pay attention. It doesn't tell you to give up. When did you get so wise? Eliza asked. I'm not wise. I'm just too stubborn to panic. He set the knife aside. How are you feeling? Physically, I mean. Heavy, tired, like I'm carrying a boulder around. She shifted, trying to find a comfortable position. The baby's running out of room. I can feel every movement. That's good, right? Active baby means healthy baby. That's what the books say. Doesn't make it comfortable. Rowan moved behind her and started rubbing her lower back. Eliza groaned in relief. You're too good to me, she said. I'm exactly as good to you as you deserve, which is very good. His hands were strong, working out knots she hadn't even known were there. We're in this together, Eliza, all of it. The pregnancy, the birth, raising this kid. I'm not just here for the easy parts. There haven't been any easy parts. Exactly. So you know I mean it. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Rowan's hands steady on her back, the fire crackling, the night settling in around them. Then Eliza felt it, a tightening across her belly, sharp enough to make her gasp. What? Rowan's hands stilled. What's wrong? Nothing, just another tightening, harder this time. Just a cramp, I think. You think or you know? I don't know. It's different from the baby kicking. More, she searched for the word. More all over. Rowan came around to face her. How long between them? Between what? The cramps. Are they happening regularly? Eliza thought about it. Maybe. One a few minutes ago, one just now. All right, could be nothing, could be early labor. Either way, we stay calm, and we pay attention. He helped her stand. Let's get you comfortable. If this is labor starting, you'll need your energy. It wasn't labor, not real labor anyway. The cramping continued through the evening, uncomfortable but irregular, and by morning it had faded entirely. False alarm, Rowan said, though he looked like he hadn't slept. You stayed up watching me all night, didn't you? Someone had to. Rowan, you need sleep too. I'll sleep when I'm not worried you're about to give birth while I'm unconscious. He rubbed his eyes. I'm fine. We're both fine. Everything's fine. He was a terrible liar. Over the next few weeks, the false alarms became more frequent. Eliza would feel contractions start, and they'd both go into alert mode, only for the contractions to fade away after an hour or two. This baby's messing with us, Eliza said after the fourth false alarm. Kid's already got a sense of humor. We're in trouble. But underneath the joking, they were both wearing thin. The waiting was harder than either of them had expected. Every pain could be the real thing. Every twinge could mean go time. The constant vigilance was exhausting. October arrived with freezing rain and the first real snow. The world turned gray and white and hostile again. Eliza felt like a trapped animal, too big to move comfortably, too restless to stay still. I can't do this anymore, she said one afternoon, pacing the cabin like a caged bear. I can't just wait. I can't sleep. I can't think about anything else. I'm losing my mind. You're not losing your mind. You're just ready for this to be over. I'm so ready. I'm so tired. I want to meet this baby, and I want my body back, and I want to stop feeling like I'm going to explode. Soon, Rowan said, though neither of them knew if that was true. That night, Eliza woke to wetness between her legs and a cramp so intense it stole her breath. Rowan, she managed. He was up instantly. What is it? Water broke. She could hear the fear in her own voice. This is it. This is real. For just a second, she saw panic flash across Rowan's face. Then it was gone, replaced by the same calm focus he wore when hunting or fighting or doing anything that required steady hands and a clear head. "All right," he said. "We're ready for this. We've prepared. We know what to do." He helped her down from the loft. "How far apart are the contractions?" "I don't know. That was the first one that woke me." "Okay. We time the next one. We see how fast this is moving." The next contraction hit 15 minutes later, then 12 minutes, then 10. "It's speeding up," Rowan said, consulting the medical book for the 100th time. "That's normal. Everything's proceeding normally." But nothing about this felt normal. Eliza had never experienced pain like this, pain that came in waves, building and cresting and receding only to build again stronger. Pain that took over her entire body and left no room for thought or fear or anything except getting through it. Hours passed. Eliza lost track of time. The world narrowed to the space between contractions, the brief respites where she could breathe and think and remember she was a person and not just a body in agony. Rowan stayed with her through all of it. He timed contractions, brought her water, let her squeeze his hand hard enough to leave bruises, wiped sweat from her face, and told her she was doing fine when she was absolutely certain she was dying. "I can't do this," she gasped during a particularly brutal contraction. "You're already doing it," Rowan said. "You're doing it right now." "I can't. It's too much. It hurts too much." "I know, but you're strong enough. You've always been strong enough." "I'm not. I'm really not." "Yes, you are." He held her face between his hands, forcing her to look at him. "You walked away from everything you knew. You climbed a mountain in winter. You survived being cast out and starting over and learning to hunt, and every hard thing this place has thrown at you. You can do this too." "This is different. This is exactly the same. It's hard and it hurts, and you do it anyway because there's no other choice. That's all you've ever done, Eliza. Hard things, and this is just one more." Another contraction hit, and Eliza couldn't speak through it, could barely breathe. But Rowan's words stayed with her. Hard things. She'd done hard things before. She could do this. Sometime near dawn, Eliza thought it was dawn, though she couldn't be sure, everything changed. The contractions shifted. The pressure became unbearable. "Something's different," she managed. Rowan checked. His face went pale. "The baby's coming. Right now. When I tell you to push, you push as hard as you can." What followed was a blur of pain and pressure and effort so intense Eliza thought she might split in half. She pushed when Rowan told her to push. She breathed when he told her to breathe. She bore down with everything she had and prayed it would be enough. And then suddenly, shockingly, there was a baby crying. A baby. Crying. Alive. Eliza collapsed back, barely conscious, barely breathing, but aware enough to hear that sound and know it meant everything had worked. She'd done it. They'd done it. "It's a girl," Rowan said, and his voice cracked. "It's a girl, and she's perfect." He cleaned the baby with shaking hands, wrapped her in the blankets they'd prepared, checked her over with the desperate thoroughness of someone who'd memorized every warning sign from the medical books. Then he placed her in Eliza's arms. The baby was small and red and angry-looking, her face scrunched up as she wailed. She had dark hair and eyes that might be blue or brown or something else entirely. Her fingers were impossibly tiny, her nails like little shells. She was the most beautiful thing Eliza had ever seen. "Hi," Eliza whispered. "Hi, little one. We've been waiting for you." The baby's crying softened. She blinked up at Eliza with unfocused eyes, and Eliza felt something slot into place in her chest. Something fundamental. Something that changed everything. "She's ours," Eliza said, looking up at Rowan. "We made a person." "We made a person," Rowan agreed. He looked shell-shocked, like he couldn't quite believe it was real. They sat there for a long time, the three of them, while the sun came up outside and the cabin grew light and warm. The baby nursed for the first time, clumsy but determined. Eliza had never been so exhausted in her life, but she couldn't look away from this tiny creature they'd brought into the world. "What should we name her?" Rowan asked. Eliza hadn't thought about it. They'd been so focused on just surviving the pregnancy and birth that naming had seemed premature, like tempting fate. But now here she was. This small, perfect person who needed a name. "Something strong," Eliza said. "Something that means she belongs here." They tossed names back and forth. Nothing felt right. Too soft or too harsh or too reminiscent of people they'd rather forget. Finally, Rowan said, "What about winter?" "Winter?" Eliza tested it. "That's not a traditional name. Nothing about us is traditional. She was born in October, but she'll grow up knowing winter, living in it, surviving it, same as us." He touched the baby's tiny hand. "Winter Hale. Strong name for a strong girl." "Winter," Eliza repeated. The baby's fingers wrapped around one of hers. "Yeah, that fits." The first week was brutal. The baby cried constantly, hungry, uncomfortable, adjusting to the world outside the womb. Eliza was in pain from the birth, exhausted beyond measure, and had no idea what she was doing. Rowan was just as lost. They stumbled through it together, learned to change diapers made from rags, figured out feeding schedules, took turns walking Winter when she wouldn't settle, survived on fragments of sleep and sheer determination. "I don't know how people do this," Eliza said on the third night, rocking Winter in the chair Rowan had built. "How does anyone survive this?" "Same way we survive everything else," Rowan said. He looked as exhausted as she felt. 1 hour at a time. 1 day at a time. Until it gets easier. Does it get easier? Has to. Otherwise the human race would have died out by now. It did get easier. Slowly. Winter's crying became more predictable. Eliza's body began to heal. They developed rhythms and routines. By the second week, they'd figured out the basics. By the third, it almost felt manageable. But then the storm hit. It came out of nowhere, one of those early winter blizzards that dropped 3 feet of snow in a matter of hours. The wind howled like something alive and furious. The temperature plummeted. They were prepared. They had food, fuel, supplies. The cabin was solid. But Winter was so small, so fragile, and the cold was so complete. Eliza held her daughter close, wrapped in every blanket they owned, and tried not to think about how easily that small body could freeze, how quickly things could go wrong. "She's fine," Rowan said, reading her fear. "Feel her. She's warm." Eliza checked. Winter was indeed warm, snuggled against her mother's chest, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos outside. "We need to keep the fire going all night," Eliza said. "I know. I'll take first watch. We should both stay up. Eliza, you haven't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch in 3 weeks. You need rest." "What if something happens while I'm asleep? What if the fire goes out, or the roof caves in, or—" "Then I'll handle it. That's what I'm here for." He put his hand on her shoulder. "You can't do everything. You can't stay vigilant every second. You'll break. Trust me to keep watch while you sleep." It went against every instinct Eliza had, but she was so tired, so completely exhausted that her vision blurred and her thoughts moved like sludge. "Wake me in 3 hours," she said finally. "Then we switch." "Deal." Eliza lay down with Winter beside her, both of them cocooned in blankets. Despite her fear, sleep came fast and hard. She woke to shouting. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't place it. The cabin was dark except for the fire. Winter was still sleeping beside her. Rowan was at the door with his rifle, and there were voices outside. Male voices. Angry voices. "Open up, Hale. We know you're in there." Eliza's blood went cold. "Stay down," Rowan said quietly. "Don't let them know you're awake." "Who is it?" Eliza whispered. "Trouble," he called out through the door. "State your business." "Our business is with you. You've got something that belongs to us." "I don't have anything of yours. Leave now and there won't be problems." "The woman, the one from Haven's Ridge. The council wants her back." Eliza's heart stopped. Haven's Ridge. They'd come for her. After all this time, they'd actually come for her. "She's my wife," Rowan shouted back. "She's not going anywhere. The marriage isn't legal. She was property of the settlement. She needs to return." "Property?" Rowan's voice went deadly quiet. "You think she's property?" "The council voted. All unmarried women of childbearing age are settlement assets. They're needed for the good of the community. Settlement assets." Eliza felt sick. They'd gone from casting her out to claiming ownership, and now they wanted her back, probably because the fever had killed so many people they were desperate for anyone who could produce children. "She's not going back," Rowan called. "Now leave before this gets ugly. We're not leaving without her. One way or another, she's coming with us." Eliza heard something hit the door. Then again, they were trying to break in. Rowan turned to her. In the firelight, his face was hard and furious and scared. Take Winter. Hide in the loft. Don't come down no matter what you hear. Rowan, do it now, Eliza. Please. She wanted to argue, wanted to fight beside him, but she had Winter to think about now. Her daughter, small and helpless, and depending on her for everything, so she grabbed the baby and climbed to the loft, tucking them both into the darkest corner behind the stored furs. Below, the door shuddered under repeated impacts. Rowan's rifle fired. Once, twice. Someone screamed. Then the door exploded inward. 3 men poured through the shattered door. Eliza could see them from her hiding spot in the loft. Dark shapes against the firelight, moving with the confidence of people who thought they'd already won. They were wrong. Rowan met the first one with the butt of his rifle, catching him across the jaw hard enough that Eliza heard bone crack. The man went down sprawling, blood pouring from his mouth. The second one lunged with a knife, and Rowan sidestepped, letting the attacker's momentum carry him into the table. Wood splintered with a sound like a gunshot. The third man had a pistol. He raised it, hand shaking but determined. Rowan was faster. His knife found the man's shoulder before the trigger got pulled, and the shot went wide, punching a hole in the cabin wall 3 feet from anything that mattered. The man screamed and dropped the gun. But there were more outside. Eliza could hear them shouting, organizing, preparing for another assault. At least 3 more voices, maybe 4. They'd brought a small army for this. Winter started to cry. The sound cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. Every head in the cabin turned toward the loft, toward the source of that tiny, helpless sound. "She's up there!" one of the men shouted, the one Rowan had hit with the rifle. His words came out mushy through his broken jaw. "The woman and the baby!" "No, no, no, no." Eliza pressed Winter closer, one hand over her daughter's mouth to muffle the crying. It felt monstrous, suffocating her own child. But getting found felt infinitely worse. Winter squirmed against the pressure, confused and frightened, her little face turning red. Rowan moved to block the ladder to the loft, positioning himself between the men and his family. Blood dripped from his knife. His face was set in hard lines that Eliza had never seen before. Not angry, exactly, but absolutely certain. "You want them? You go through me," he said quietly. "Stand down, Hale. This doesn't have to end bad for you. We're just here for the woman and the child. You can walk away from this. This is my wife. My daughter. There's no walking away." "Your wife?" The man who'd spoken, tall with a scar across his cheek, laughed. "That marriage isn't recognized by any legal authority. She was never yours to claim. She belonged to Havens Ridge." "People don't belong to settlements," Rowan said. "She made her choice. She left. She was cast out. That's different from leaving, and the council has voted all women of childbearing age who were cast out are now recalled. Settlement property, needed for the survival of the community." The scarred man took a step closer. "We got nothing against you, Hale. You're a free man. You can find another woman, but this one comes with us." "Over my dead body." "That can be arranged." 2 more men came through the door, making 5 in total against Rowan's 1. The math was brutal and obvious. Outside, Eliza could still hear at least 3 more voices. They'd brought 8 men, maybe 9, to take back 1 woman and a baby. The desperation of it would have been laughable if it wasn't so terrifying. Rowan couldn't win this. Not alone, not against these numbers. He was good, better than good. But 5 armed men in close quarters with more waiting outside? He'd be lucky to take down 2 before they overwhelmed him. But Eliza had a rifle up here, loaded, ready. Rowan had made sure of that after the bear attack. Always keep a weapon within reach, he'd said. Always be prepared. And she'd killed before. The deer, yes, but that had been different. That had been food. Survival of a different kind. Could she kill a person? She looked at Winter, still crying softly against her chest despite Eliza's hand muffling the sound. Looked at Rowan below, standing between these men and his family with nothing but a knife and determination. Looked at the rifle within arm's reach, moonlight gleaming dully on its barrel. Every instinct screamed at her to stay hidden, to protect the baby by staying quiet and unseen and letting Rowan handle this. But staying hidden meant watching him die, meant letting them take her and Winter back to a settlement that viewed them as property, as resources to be used and discarded based on the community's needs. Eliza had spent 28 years being told she didn't matter, that her wants, her choices, her very existence were secondary to what other people needed from her. She was done with that. She looked at Winter one more time, memorized her daughter's face in case this went wrong, in case this was the last moment they had together. Then she tucked Winter deep into the furs, so deep that even if someone climbed up here, they'd have to search to find her. Wrapped her in blankets to muffle any sound, kissed her forehead and whispered, "Stay quiet, baby girl. Please stay quiet." Winter's eyes were wide and frightened, but the crying had stopped. Maybe she sensed the danger. Maybe she was just too scared to make noise. Either way, it was the best Eliza could hope for. She grabbed the rifle, checked the load. 1 shot in the chamber, 5 more in the magazine. 7 bullets total against 8 or 9 men. The math still wasn't good, but it was better than what Rowan had. The ladder to the loft was on the far side of the cabin, blocked by 2 of the men. No way to climb down. No way to do this quietly or carefully, just action and consequence. Eliza took a breath, let it out, felt something settle into place inside her chest, something cold and clear and absolutely certain. Then she jumped. She hit the floor hard, the impact shooting up through her ankles and knees. Pain bloomed, but she ignored it, kept her feet, brought the rifle up smooth and steady, the way Rowan had taught her 100 times. Find your target. Breathe. Squeeze. Don't pull. The shot took one of the men in the leg. He went down screaming, clutching at the wound, blood spreading dark across his trousers. 6 left in the cabin, at least 3 more outside. They spun toward her, shocked. They'd expected a cowering woman hiding with her baby. They'd gotten something else entirely, someone who jumped into the middle of a fight with a rifle and the will to use it. "Eliza, get back up there!" Rowan shouted, his voice sharp with fear. She ignored him, worked the bolt, ejecting the spent cartridge and chambering a new one. The motion was automatic now, muscle memory from months of practice. Aimed at the scarred man who'd been doing all the talking. "Everyone stops moving or the next shot goes through his chest," Eliza said. Her voice didn't shake. She was surprised by that, surprised by how steady she felt despite the fear churning in her gut. The men froze. The scarred man raised his hand slowly, trying to look non-threatening. "Easy now. No need for anyone else to get hurt. You broke into our home. You threatened my family. People are already hurt." Eliza kept the rifle trained on him. "And more will be if you don't leave right now." "We're not leaving without you. The council was clear." "I don't care what the council said. I'm not going back. Not now. Not ever. You can tell them I died. Tell them I ran off further into the wilderness. Tell them whatever you want. But I'm staying here." "That's not an option." "Then I guess we're at an impasse." One of the men, young, barely older than a boy, shifted his weight. Eliza caught the movement in her peripheral vision, saw his hand drift toward the pistol at his belt. She shot him before he could draw it. The bullet caught him in the shoulder, spun him around, dropped him. He hit the floor hard and didn't get up, just lay there moaning and bleeding. 5 left inside. 3 outside. Eliza worked the bolt again. 5 bullets left. The math was getting tighter. Rowan used the distraction, went after the nearest man with his knife, moving with the brutal efficiency of someone who'd done this before. The man tried to block, managed to deflect the first strike, but Rowan was already moving to the second. The knife found the man's side, slid between ribs, came out red. The man went down, clutching the wound, making wet, gasping sounds that meant Rowan had punctured a lung. 4 left inside. The scarred man's facade of calm was cracking. "You're making this worse than it has to be. We didn't come here to kill anyone. We came for the woman and the child. That's all." "That's all?" Eliza laughed, and it came out harsh and bitter. "You came to kidnap me and my daughter, to drag us back to a place that cast me out when I was inconvenient and now wants to reclaim me because I'm useful. You think that's not worth fighting over?" "It's for the good of the community. Your community isn't my problem anymore. I have my own community now. Right here, this cabin, this man, this child. That's my community, and I'll kill every single one of you before I let you destroy it." She meant it, every word, and they could see it in her eyes, hear it in her voice. The scarred man's hand moved toward his gun. Eliza shot him, not in the leg or shoulder this time. Center mass, the way Rowan had taught her. Aim for the biggest target. Make it count. The man dropped like a puppet with cut strings. 3 left inside. Still 3 outside. And 4 bullets in the rifle. One of the remaining men broke, just turned and ran for the door, stumbling over his wounded companions in his desperation to get out. Eliza let him go. 3 left inside, 4 outside now. Anyone else want to try their luck? Rowan asked. He'd retrieved a fallen pistol and had it trained on the 2 remaining men. Or are we done here? The 2 men looked at each other, looked at their dead and wounded on the floor, looked at Eliza and Rowan, both armed, both clearly willing to keep fighting. We're leaving, one of them said. But this isn't over. The council can send more men if they want, Eliza interrupted. And we'll kill them too. Keep sending them until you run out or until you figure out I'm not worth this much blood. Your choice. The 2 men backed toward the door, hands raised, moving carefully. They grabbed one of their wounded, the young one Eliza had shot in the shoulder, and dragged him toward the exit. What about the others? Rowan asked, gesturing to the bodies on the floor. Leave them. We'll come back for them. No, you won't. You take them now or they stay here permanently. I'm not storing your dead. The men hesitated, then grabbed 2 more bodies, one dead, one dying, left the others behind as they fled into the night. Eliza and Rowan stood in the wreckage of their cabin, surrounded by blood and broken furniture and the 2 bodies the attackers hadn't been able to carry. Outside, they could hear the men shouting to each other, organizing a retreat, crashing through the underbrush in their panic to get away. Then silence. Just the wind and the crackling fire and Winter crying upstairs. Winter. Eliza dropped the rifle and ran for the ladder, climbed it faster than she'd ever moved, threw aside the furs to find her daughter exactly where she'd left her, red-faced and terrified but alive, whole, unharmed. I'm sorry, Eliza sobbed, gathering Winter into her arms. I'm so sorry I left you. I'm so sorry you had to be alone and scared. Mama's here now. Mama's got you. Winter's crying was furious now, the kind of angry wailing that meant she was more offended than hurt. Eliza had never been so grateful to hear that sound. Below, Rowan was checking the remaining bodies, confirming they were dead, no threats left. Then she heard him dragging them outside, heard the door scrape as he tried to force it back into place with half the frame destroyed. She should help, should do something. But she couldn't seem to make her body move. She just sat in the loft holding Winter, rocking back and forth, feeling the adrenaline drain out of her system and leave behind shaking hands and a roiling stomach. She'd killed 2 men tonight, maybe 3. She wasn't sure if the one Rowan had stabbed would survive his wounds. Shot them, watched them fall, felt nothing but grim satisfaction in the moment. What did that make her? Rowan climbed up to the loft eventually. His face was spattered with blood, not his own, thankfully, and his hands were shaking in a way she'd never seen before. You okay? He asked quietly. I killed people tonight. I know. I saw. Multiple people. I shot them and Her voice cracked. I didn't even hesitate. I just did it. Because you had to. Because they were going to kill me and take you and Winter. Rowan sat beside her carefully, like she might break. You did what you had to do. I should feel worse about it. Shouldn't I feel worse? Shouldn't I be crying or sick or something? Eliza looked at him. Instead, I just feel relieved. Glad it's over. Glad we're alive. What does that say about me? It says you're a survivor. It says you prioritize your family over the people trying to hurt them. He touched her face gently. The guilt will come later. Trust me on that. Right now, you're still in fight mode. Still running on adrenaline. Give it time. How much time? Depends on the person. Could be hours, could be days, could be years, he paused. Could be never if you're the kind of person who can live with hard choices. Are you that kind of person? Most days, yeah. Some days are harder than others. Some nights I wake up and see faces. But I'm still here, still functioning, still able to look at myself in the mirror. He was quiet for a moment. You did good tonight, Eliza. You saved us. All 3 of us. I jumped into a fight with a baby upstairs and no plan beyond shooting people until they stopped coming. Like I said, you saved us. He smiled faintly. You're terrifying when you're protective, you know that? Good. Maybe they'll think twice before coming back. They'll come back, Rowan said quietly. Maybe not tonight. Maybe not this month. But they'll come back. Desperate people don't give up easy. Eliza looked at Winter, who'd finally stopped crying and was just hiccuping softly, her face pressed against Eliza's chest. So small, so fragile, so completely dependent on them to keep her safe. Then we'll fight again, Eliza said. As many times as it takes. They sat in silence for a while, the three of them, while the reality of what had just happened settled over them like ash. They'd killed people tonight, defended their home with lethal force, crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and Eliza knew with bone-deep certainty that she'd do it again. Would do it 100 times if that's what it took to protect this life they'd built. The guilt would come eventually. The nightmares. The weight of those deaths. But right now, she just felt grateful to be alive. Eventually, they had to move. Had to deal with the immediate aftermath. Rowan climbed down first, started assessing the damage. Eliza followed with Winter, who refused to be put down and clung to her mother like a baby monkey. The cabin was a disaster. The door hung crooked on broken hinges. Blood pooled on the floor in dark, sticky patches. The table was destroyed. One window had been shattered by a stray bullet. The whole place reeked of gunpowder and violence. "We can't stay here tonight," Rowan said. "Not with the door like this. Anyone could walk in." "Where do we go? It's the middle of winter, middle of a storm. The shed. It's smaller, easier to defend. We can barricade ourselves in there until morning." He was already gathering supplies, blankets, food, water, weapons. "Come on. We need to move before they change their minds about retreating." They hauled everything they'd need to the shed, the small outbuilding where Rowan stored tools and equipment. It wasn't designed for living, but it had 4 solid walls and a door that could be barred from the inside. It would have to be enough. Rowan built a small fire in the makeshift stove he'd rigged up for heating the space in winter. Not much warmth, but enough to keep them from freezing. They piled blankets in the corner and settled in, all 3 of them huddled together for heat and comfort. Winter finally fell asleep around midnight, exhausted from crying. Eliza held her close and tried not to think about all the ways this night could have gone differently, all the ways they could have lost. "I've been thinking," Rowan said quietly, "about what that man said, about the council recalling cast-outs, about viewing women as settlement property. What about it? If they're that desperate enough to send 8 men into the mountains in winter, desperate enough to attack us in our home, they're not going to stop. They'll keep coming, more men, better armed, better organized." He stared into the fire. "We can fight them off once, maybe twice, but eventually they'll overwhelm us. That's just math." Eliza's stomach clenched. "So what are you saying? That we should run? Give up everything we've built here?" "I'm saying we need to think strategically, figure out our options." He looked at her. "Jacob mentioned other settlements, smaller ones, more remote. Places where councils don't have reach. We could—" "No," Eliza said it firmly. "No running, no hiding. This is our home. We built it. We fought for it. I'm not abandoning it because some council decided they own me. Even if staying means constant fighting, years of looking over our shoulders, raising winter in a war zone, this whole mountain is a war zone. Everything here is trying to kill us, the cold, the animals, the terrain. What's a few more humans on top of that?" She shifted Winter carefully, trying not to wake her. "I'm tired of running, Rowan. I ran from Haven's Ridge, ran all the way up this mountain, and I'm done. This is where I make my stand." "It's not just your stand anymore, it's Winter's too, and any other children we might have. Every choice we make affects them. I know that, and I want them to grow up knowing their parents didn't back down, didn't let fear dictate their lives, didn't surrender their freedom because other people demanded it." Her voice was fierce. "I want Winter to know that when the world told us we couldn't have this life, we fought for it anyway, and won." Rowan was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. "All right, we stay. We fight. We make this work somehow." "You sure?" "No, but I trust your instincts, and your instinct says stay, so we stay." He managed a tired smile. "Besides, I've never been good at running away from things. That's because you're as stubborn as I am. Match made in heaven. Or hell, depending on how you look at it." They stayed in the shed for 2 days, only venturing out to check the cabin and make sure no one had returned. The bodies they'd left behind had been taken. Whether by the men from Haven's Ridge or by scavengers, they couldn't tell. But the blood remained, dark stains on the cabin floor that would probably never come out completely. Rowan spent those 2 days repairing the door, reinforcing the windows, turning their home into something more like a fortress. Eliza helped where she could while managing Winter, who was cranky and clingy after the trauma of that night. We need better defenses, Rowan said as he hammered boards across the lower windows. A way to see them coming before they get close. Some kind of early warning system. Like what? Bells, tripwires, something that makes noise when someone approaches. He paused in his hammering. And we need to clear the tree line back further. Right now, someone could get within 50 feet of the cabin before we'd see them. That's too close. That's a lot of work. Yeah, but it beats getting surprised again. He tested the boards, making sure they were solid. We're going to have to change how we live, Eliza. Be more vigilant, more defensive. It's not going to be the same as it was before. She knew he was right. Their peaceful life on the mountain, or as peaceful as life on a mountain could be, was over. They'd declared war whether they'd wanted to or not, and war changed everything. Over the next few weeks, they transformed their home into something defensible. Rowan built a platform on the roof where they could keep watch, strung bells on wires around the perimeter, cleared trees and brush back 100 feet in every direction so nothing could approach unseen, stockpiled weapons and ammunition. They took turns on watch now, always one of them awake and armed. Sleep became a luxury grabbed in shifts. Every sound outside made them tense. Every shadow could be a threat. It was exhausting, unsustainable in the long term, but it kept them alive. Jacob came through in early December, and his eyes widened when he saw what they'd done to the place. Expecting a siege? He asked, taking in the fortifications. Had one already, Rowan said. 8 men from Haven's Ridge came to take Eliza back. And? 5 of them didn't leave. Jacob whistled low. Damn. Word is the council's going crazy, sending out search parties, offering rewards for information about cast-outs. They're desperate. Desperate people are dangerous people, Eliza said. That they are. Jacob looked troubled. You know they're not just coming after you, right? They're going after anyone who left, anyone they think they can reclaim. There are bounty hunters working the territory now, professional trackers. This isn't just a few angry council members anymore. It's organized. Eliza felt cold that had nothing to do with the weather. How organized? Organized enough that I've heard stories from 3 different sources. People disappearing in the night. Women being dragged back to settlements against their will. Men who tried to protect them ending up dead. He shook his head. It's bad out there. And getting worse. After Jacob left, Eliza and Rowan sat in the cabin and faced the reality of their situation. They weren't just fighting off one desperate settlement anymore. They were up against something bigger, something systematic. We could still leave, Rowan said quietly. Head further north. Find somewhere so remote even bounty hunters won't bother. For how long? How far do we run before we're out of places to run to? Eliza shook her head. No, we stay. And if they send bounty hunters, we deal with bounty hunters, same as we dealt with the men from Haven's Ridge. This is going to get ugly, Eliza. Uglier than it already is. I know, but what's the alternative? Spend the rest of our lives running, always looking over our shoulders, never settling anywhere because we're afraid? She looked at him. I won't live like that. I won't teach Winter to live like that. Winter chose that moment to toddle over, clutching her rag doll. Mama? Sad? Eliza picked her up, held her close. No, baby. Mama's not sad. Mama's just thinking. Thinking loud, Winter observed with the blunt honesty of a toddler. Despite everything, Eliza laughed. Yeah, thinking loud. Sorry about that. They made it through December, through January. No more attacks came, but the tension never eased. Every night could be the night. Every stranger in the territory could be a bounty hunter. They lived with their rifles always loaded, always within reach. Slept in shifts. Taught Winter to hide on command. Made a game of it so she wouldn't be scared, but Eliza hated it anyway. Hated that her daughter had to learn survival skills at 2 years old. But what choice did they have? February brought another storm. This one so severe they were trapped in the cabin for a week. But it also brought a strange kind of peace. The snow was so deep, the visibility so poor, that no one could reach them even if they tried. For 1 week, they could breathe, could relax, could almost pretend their life was normal. Winter thrived during that week, getting all of her parents' attention, playing games, learning new words, being a normal 2-year-old instead of a child living in a war zone. And Eliza realized something that should have been obvious, but hit her like a revelation anyway. She was pregnant again. She'd missed 2 cycles now. Her breasts were tender. Her appetite had shifted. The signs were all there, had been there for weeks, but she'd been too stressed and vigilant to notice. Now, trapped in the cabin with nothing to do but wait out the storm, she couldn't ignore it anymore. She was carrying another child into this mess. "Rowan," she said one evening after Winter was asleep, "we need to talk." He looked up from the knife he was sharpening. "What is it?" "I'm pregnant." The knife slipped. Rowan caught it before it could cut him, but just barely. "You're what?" "Pregnant. About 2 months along, I think. Maybe 3. "Are you sure?" "Pretty sure. All the signs are there." Rowan set down the knife carefully. When did you... How long have you known?" "Just figured it out this week. With everything happening, I hadn't been paying attention to my cycles." She wrapped her arms around herself. "This changes things." "How so?" "How so?" "Rowan, I'm going to be heavily pregnant by summer, probably can't fight effectively by fall. And if they attack when I'm giving birth..." She couldn't finish the sentence. "Then we make sure they don't attack when you're giving birth. We prepare. We adapt. Same as we always do." He came over and took her hands. "This doesn't change the plan, Eliza. We stay. We fight. We protect our family." "Our growing family," Eliza said weakly. "Our growing family," he agreed, "which means we need to be even more careful, even more prepared. But we can do this." "Can we? Really? Because it feels like we're barely holding on as it is." "We're doing better than barely holding on. We've survived everything thrown at us so far. An attack, a siege, the worst winter in years. We've adapted and overcome and kept going." He squeezed her hands. "We can handle one more baby." Eliza wanted to believe him. Some days she did. But other days, when the fear and exhaustion caught up with her, she wondered if they were just delaying the inevitable. If eventually Haven's Ridge or the bounty hunters, or just the sheer weight of living under constant threat, would break them. Those were the days Rowan seemed to sense without her saying anything. The days he'd take Winter outside to play and give Eliza time alone. The days he'd rub her shoulders by the fire and tell her stories about his early years on the mountain, when everything was impossible until it wasn't. "You know what I've learned?" he said one of those nights. "Impossible is just another way of saying really hard, and we're good at really hard. Are we, though? Or are we just stubborn? Both. We're stubborn enough to keep trying the really hard things until we figure them out." He kissed the top of her head. "That's all survival is, Eliza. Stubbornness with a purpose." "That should be embroidered on a pillow," she muttered. "I'll get right on that." Spring came eventually, the way it always did. The snow melted, the world turned green. Winter learned to run and immediately used the skill to get into everything within a quarter-mile radius. And Eliza's belly grew, obvious proof that their family was expanding, whether they were ready or not. Jacob came through in late April with news. "Haven's Ridge is done," he said without preamble. "Completely collapsed. Last of the residents scattered 3 weeks ago. The buildings are empty. The whole settlement's abandoned." Eliza felt that complicated mix of emotions again. Vindication and sadness tangled together so tightly she couldn't separate them. "What about the council? The people who sent men after me?" "Dead, mostly. Elder Hutchins died of the fever. Sarah Pembroke got killed in a fight over food stores. The others either died or fled to other settlements." Jacob shook his head. "It's over, Eliza. The people who cast you out, who tried to reclaim you, they're gone. You won." "I don't feel like I won," Eliza said quietly. "That's because winning never feels like you think it will. You expect triumph, celebration. What you get is just relief that it's over." He looked at her growing belly. "Another one on the way? Due in the fall. You two don't waste time. Didn't really plan it. Best things in life are usually unplanned." Jacob handed over his trade goods. "You still fortified like you're expecting an army?" "Old habits," Rowan said. "Good habits in this territory. Even with Haven's Ridge gone, there are plenty of other threats out here." Jacob's expression was serious. "You did the right thing, standing your ground. Most people would have run, but you stayed and fought and built something worth fighting for. That matters." After Jacob left, Eliza stood outside the cabin and looked at what they'd created. The fortifications, yes, the cleared perimeter, the watch platforms, the reinforced walls. But also the garden, now bursting with early spring growth. The clothes line where Winter's tiny dresses flapped in the breeze. The cradle Rowan was building for the new baby, sanded smooth and carved with intricate patterns. This was their life, messy and dangerous and beautiful and theirs. Haven's Ridge was gone. The people who'd judged her were scattered or dead. The council that had tried to reclaim her had collapsed under its own weight. And she was still here, still standing, still building. That had to count for something. The pregnancy was harder the second time. Eliza was older, more worn down, carrying the weight of constant vigilance on top of the physical burden of growing a human. She tired easily. Her back ached constantly. Her feet swelled until she could barely walk by July. But Winter was a surprising help. At 2.5, she'd taken on the role of assistant with serious dedication. She'd bring Eliza water without being asked, would pat her mother's belly and whisper to the baby, would play quietly when Eliza needed to rest. "She's going to be a good big sister," Rowan observed one afternoon. "She's already a good big sister. The baby's lucky to have her. We're all lucky to have each other." It was such a simple statement, delivered so casually, but it made Eliza's throat tight. They were lucky. Despite everything, the attacks, the constant threat, the harsh life they'd chosen, they had each other. They had love. They had purpose. They had a family worth fighting for. The baby came in early October, right on schedule. A boy this time, smaller than Winter had been, but just as loud. They named him Reed because Eliza had been thinking about her father's favorite saying, "Bend like a reed in the wind, but never break." It seemed appropriate for a child born into this life. The birth was easier than Winter's had been. Rowan knew what he was doing this time, and Eliza's body remembered the process. 5 hours of labor, and Reed was there, screaming his outrage at being forced into the cold mountain air. "He's got your stubborn streak already," Rowan said, cleaning his son with shaking hands. "Good. He'll need it." They settled into a new rhythm after that. 4 of them now instead of 3. Less sleep, more work, double the chaos. But also double the love. Winter was fascinated by her baby brother. Would sit next to him for hours, just watching him sleep or make faces or wave his tiny fists. She took her role as protector seriously, alerting her parents to every sound Reed made as if they might somehow miss it. "Baby crying," she'd announce solemnly. "Yes, baby is crying. Thank you for the update, Winter." "Baby hungry." Probably. Good observation. It was exhausting and wonderful and terrifying all at once. And through it all, they maintained their vigilance. The watch rotations, the loaded weapons, the bells on the perimeter. Because Haven's Ridge might be gone, but the world was still dangerous. No more attacks came that winter, or the winter after. Slowly, carefully, they began to relax. Not completely, they'd never be completely relaxed again, but enough to breathe. Years passed. Winter grew tall and strong, learning to hunt and shoot and survive the way her parents had. Reed followed in her footsteps, stubborn and fearless and completely certain of his place in the world. They had one more child, a girl they named Sage, born in the middle of a thunderstorm and laughing by the time she was 3 months old. The cabin expanded to accommodate them. Rowan added a second room, then a third, built better furniture, improved the defenses not out of fear now, but out of habit. This was their life, their mountain, their home. And when Winter was old enough to ask why they lived so far from other people, Eliza told her the truth. Because the world didn't want us, told us we were too much, too big, too inconvenient, too costly to keep around. She looked at all 3 of her children. So we built our own world instead, one where being strong and different isn't a flaw, it's what keeps you alive. "What if we want to see other settlements someday?" Winter asked. "What if we want to know what they're like?" "Then you'll go. You'll see. You'll make your own choices about where you belong." Eliza brushed hair out of her daughter's face. Hair so like her own. "But you'll always have this place to come back to, always have a home where you're wanted, needed, loved exactly as you are." "Promise?" "Promise." Eliza stood on the porch one evening, years after that night when men had broken down their door. Reed was helping Rowan check the traps. Sage was inside practicing her letters. Winter was reading by the fire, almost grown now, on the verge of making her own choices about her life. The mountain stretched out before Eliza, vast and beautiful and still dangerous, still testing them every day, still demanding everything they had. But she'd stopped seeing it as an adversary somewhere along the way, started seeing it as a partner instead, something that pushed them to be stronger, better, more capable. She'd started her life being told she was too much, too big to fit into the neat little box society had built for women, too costly to maintain, too inconvenient to keep around. But up here, too much was exactly what it took to survive. Her strength, her size, her stubborn refusal to make herself smaller, all the things that had made her unwanted in civilization made her invaluable here. The world hadn't changed its mind about her. She'd changed her world instead. And in doing so, she'd built something that would outlast her. A family that knew their worth wasn't determined by other people's fear or judgment. Children who would grow up strong and capable and certain of their place in a world that had tried to tell their mother she didn't have one. Rowan came back from the trap line and joined her on the porch. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set behind the peaks the way they'd done 1,000 times before. "You ever regret it?" he asked. "Choosing this life?" "Not once," Eliza said honestly. "You?" "Never." He put his arm around her. "We built something impossible here." "We built something necessary here," Eliza corrected. "A place where people could be exactly who they were meant to be, where strength mattered more than conformity, where families could thrive on their own terms." Inside, Sage called for her mother. Reed started telling a story at high volume. Winter laughed at something, the sound carrying through the open door. Their life, their family, their impossible, necessary, beautiful chaos. Eliza Brenner Hale, cast out, rejected, deemed unworthy by people who'd never bothered to see her clearly, had become exactly who she was always meant to be. Not despite the mountain, but because of it. Not in spite of being told she was too much, but by embracing exactly how much she was. Someone who walked into storms instead of hiding from them. Someone who fought for what mattered and never apologized for taking up space. Someone strong enough to survive anything, even herself. And as the sun set on another day on Widow's Peak, Eliza realized the most important truth of all. She hadn't just survived, she'd lived, fully, completely, on her own terms. And that was worth every battle, every struggle, every moment of fear and doubt. Because in the end, the greatest victory wasn't proving the world wrong about her. It was building a life where the world's opinion didn't matter anymore.